In the heart of the city, where glass towers pierced the sky and the hum of ambition filled the air, Emily stood outside the imposing doors of First National Bank. Her heart raced, not from the weight of her pregnancy, but from the sting of betrayal that had brought her here. At 7 months pregnant, her body ached with the strain of carrying new life, but her spirit was heavier still. Her husband, Richard, a rising star in the corporate world and the CEO of a burgeoning tech empire, had pushed her, both literally and figuratively, into a corner she never imagined she'd face. The morning had started like any other, with Richard's polished shoes clicking across their penthouse's marble floors as he prepared for another day of conquests in boardrooms. Emily, glowing despite the fatigue of pregnancy, had tried to share a moment with him over breakfast, hoping to reconnect with the man she'd fallen in love with years ago. But Richard's eyes were glued to his phone, his fingers tapping out messages to unseen recipients. When she gently asked if he'd be home for dinner, his response was a curt shove, physical, not just verbal, that sent her stumbling against the kitchen counter. "Don't bother me, Emily," he'd snapped, his voice cold as steel. "I've got bigger things to deal with than your whining." The shove wasn't hard enough to hurt, but it was enough to shatter something inside her. This wasn't the Richard who had once promised her the world, who had knelt under starlight to propose, who had whispered dreams of a family they'd build together. That Richard had vanished, replaced by a man consumed by power, wealth, and something, or someone, else. Emily had suspected for months that Richard was unfaithful. The late nights, the unexplained trips, the lipstick stains on his collar that weren't her shade, they all pointed to a truth she didn't want to face. But the shove, that single act of disdain, was the final straw. She needed answers, and she needed them now. That's why she was at the bank. Richard's empire was built on loans and investments, and First National held the keys to his financial kingdom. Emily had no intention of confronting him directly, not yet. She wanted to understand the extent of his deceit, to see if the rumors of his reckless spending and shady deals were true. She'd heard whispers from mutual friends that Richard was funneling money into offshore accounts, possibly to fund a life with someone new. If she could access their joint account or speak to someone with authority, she might uncover the truth before it was too late. The bank's interior was a cathedral of wealth, all polished marble and gleaming chandeliers. Emily adjusted her scarf, feeling out of place in her simple maternity dress among the suited men and women who moved with purpose. She approached the counter, her hands trembling as she clutched her identification. "I'd like to speak to someone about my husband's account," she said softly to the teller, a young woman with a practiced smile. The teller's fingers danced across her keyboard, then paused. Her smile faltered. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this account is flagged for restricted access. You'll need to speak with the branch manager." Emily's stomach twisted. Restricted access. She and Richard had always shared their finances, or so she thought. Before she could protest, the teller gestured toward a glass-walled office at the far end of the lobby. "Mr. Harrington will see you now." Emily made her way to the office, her steps slow and deliberate. The weight of her pregnancy made every movement feel monumental, but it was the weight of her uncertainty that slowed her most. What would she find? Proof of Richard's betrayal. Evidence that their life together was a lie. She knocked softly on the door, and a deep, warm voice called, "Come in." The man behind the desk was not what she expected. Older, with silver hair and a face etched with both wisdom and kindness, he rose immediately, his eyes widening as they met hers. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling with something she couldn't place. "Is it really you?" She froze. The way he said her name, the familiarity in his tone, it stirred a memory she couldn't grasp. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she asked, her brow furrowing. The man, Mr. Harrington, she presumed, stepped around the desk, his expression a mix of disbelief and emotion. "You don't recognize me, do you?" he said softly. "I suppose you wouldn't. You were so young when I last saw you. Emily, I'm your uncle. Charles Harrington." The words hit her like a tidal wave. Uncle Charles. Her mother had spoken of him, a distant figure who had vanished from their lives when Emily was a child. Her mother had called him a trillionaire, a man who'd built a financial empire so vast it seemed mythical. But Emily had grown up with little, raised by a single mother who struggled to make ends meet. Charles Harrington was a name from stories, not reality. Yet here he was, standing before her, the manager of the very bank where Richard's secrets were locked away. I don't understand, Emily stammered, sinking into the chair he offered. My mother said you were gone. That you didn't want anything to do with us. Charles's face darkened with regret. That's what she believed, and I'm so sorry for that. Your mother and I had a falling out years ago, over money, ambition, things that seem so trivial now. I tried to reach out, but she wouldn't have it. I kept tabs on you from afar, Emily. I knew you'd married, that you were expecting. But I never imagined you'd walk through my door. Emily's mind reeled. This man, her uncle, was no ordinary bank manager. His tailored suit, the understated elegance of his office, the way the staff deferred to him, it all pointed to a truth her mother had hinted at but never fully explained. Charles Harrington wasn't just wealthy, he was a titan, a man whose influence stretched across continents. And now, he was looking at her with a mix of guilt and protectiveness that made her feel seen for the first time in months. Why are you here, Emily? Charles asked, his tone gentle but probing. You look troubled. Is it about your husband? The question broke the dam she'd been holding back. Words tumbled out. Richard's coldness, the shove that morning, the rumors of infidelity, the restricted account. She told him how she'd come to the bank seeking clarity, hoping to protect herself and her unborn child from whatever Richard was planning. Charles listened, his expression growing grimmer with every word. When she finished, he leaned back, his fingers steepled, and said, I know Richard. Not personally, but his name is all over this bank's records. His company's loans, his investments, they're a house of cards, Emily. He's overleveraged, reckless. And if what you're saying is true, he's not just a bad businessman. He's a bad man. Emily's heart sank. She'd suspected Richard was hiding something, but to hear it confirmed by someone with Charles's authority was devastating. What do I do? She whispered, tears brimming. I'm pregnant, I have nowhere to go, and he doesn't want this baby. Charles's eyes softened, but there was steel in his voice. You're not alone anymore, Emily. Your family. And no one hurts my family. He pressed a button on his desk, summoning an assistant. Get me everything we have on Richard Thornton's accounts. Now. As the assistant hurried out, Charles turned back to Emily. I've spent years building this empire, and I've made mistakes. Losing touch with you and your mother was the biggest. I won't let you face this alone. Richard thinks he's untouchable, but he's about to learn otherwise. His loans, his deals, they all run through this bank. And I'm the one who decides what happens next. Emily felt a spark of hope, but also fear. Richard was powerful, ruthless. Could even a man like Charles stand against him? And what would Richard do when he realized she'd stumbled into the one person who could unravel his world? As Charles began outlining a plan, freezing accounts, calling in loans, protecting her legally, Emily's mind drifted to the future. Her baby deserved better than a father who pushed and betrayed. With her trillionaire uncle by her side, maybe she could reclaim her life. But Richard wouldn't go down without a fight, and Emily knew the battle was just beginning. As Emily stumbled forward from the forceful shove, her hand instinctively cradling her swollen belly, the bank lobby fell into a stunned silence. The CEO, her husband Victor Harrington, stood there with a smug grin, his expensive suit impeccably tailored, as if pushing his pregnant wife was just another assertion of his dominance. Hurry up, you clumsy cow, he snarled under his breath, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. I don't have all day for your dramatics. Emily's eyes welled with tears, but she bit her lip, refusing to make a scene. She had endured his verbal barbs and occasional outbursts for years, all in the name of their marriage, but this public humiliation at the bank, where they had come to withdraw funds for his latest business venture, cut deeper than ever. Unbeknownst to Victor, the bank manager, Mr. Reginald Voss, had been watching the entire exchange from behind the teller line. His sharp eyes, hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses, narrowed as he recognized the young woman. Emily Voss, his niece, the daughter of his late sister whom he hadn't seen in over a decade. Reginald was no ordinary manager, he was the discreet overseer of Voss Financial Empire, a trillion-dollar conglomerate that spanned global markets, hidden behind layers of anonymity to avoid the spotlight. He had built his fortune from nothing, starting as a small-town banker and rising to control vast assets in tech, real estate, and international trade. But family was his Achilles heel, and seeing Emily mistreated ignited a fire he thought long extinguished. Reginald stepped forward, his polished shoes echoing on the marble floor. "Excuse me, sir," he said calmly, his voice carrying the weight of authority. Victor turned, annoyance flashing across his face. "What do you want? Can't you see we're in a hurry?" Reginald ignored him, focusing on Emily. "Are you all right, miss?" Emily looked up, her face paling as recognition dawned. "Uncle Reggie. Is that really you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Victor's brow furrowed. "Uncle. What the hell is this?" The lobby buzzed with whispers as Reginald pulled Emily gently aside, signaling a security guard to keep Victor at bay. "Emily, my dear, why didn't you reach out? After your mother's passing, I searched for you, but your father cut all ties." Emily wiped her tears, glancing nervously at Victor, who was now fuming and demanding answers. I married Victor 5 years ago. He promised the world, but it's been difficult. Especially now, with the baby coming." Reginald's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors of Harrington Industries, Victor's mid-tier company that scraped by on shady deals and cutthroat tactics. But to learn his own flesh and blood was suffering at this man's hands. Unacceptable. Victor pushed past the guard, grabbing Emily's arm roughly. "Enough of this reunion crap. We're leaving." But Reginald raised a hand, and suddenly, 2 more guards appeared, flanking Victor. "I don't think so, Mr. Harrington. You see, this bank isn't just any institution, it's part of my network. And assaulting a customer, especially a pregnant one, is grounds for immediate action." Victor laughed derisively. "Your network? Who are you, some glorified clerk? I could buy this place 10 times over." Reginald smiled thinly, pulling out his phone and dialing a number. "Let's test that theory." Within minutes, the bank's VIP lounge was cleared, and Emily sat on a plush sofa, sipping water as Reginald explained everything. He had amassed his trillions through savvy investments in emerging technologies like AI and renewable energy, all while maintaining a low profile. After losing touch with Emily's family due to a bitter feud with her father, he had poured his energy into philanthropy, secretly funding orphanages and women's shelters. "I never married, never had children," he confided. "You and your mother were my only family. When I saw you today, pushed like that, it broke something in me." Emily shared her story, the whirlwind romance with Victor, his rise as CEO, and the gradual erosion of their relationship. He cheated, belittled her, and now, with her pregnancy, treated her as a burden. He wants a son to inherit his empire, but if it's a girl, he says he'll divorce me, she admitted, her voice cracking. Victor, detained in a conference room, paced furiously, barking into his phone at his lawyers. "Get me out of here. This is kidnapping." But his calls went unanswered. Reginald's influence extended far beyond the bank. Unbeknownst to Victor, Voss Financial held significant stakes in Harrington Industries' creditors. A quick series of emails from Reginald triggered a cascade. Loans called in, investors pulling out, stock prices plummeting in real time on the trading floor screens visible through the glass walls. By the time Reginald entered the room with Emily by his side, Victor's face was ashen. His phone buzzed incessantly with alerts, his board demanding explanations, partners abandoning ship. "What have you done?" Victor hissed. Reginald sat across from him, folding his hands. Merely exercised my options, Mr. Harrington. You see, I'm not just a manager. I'm Reginald Voss, founder of Voss Enterprises. My net worth. Let's just say it's in the trillions. And Emily here is my niece, making her an heir to it all. Victor's eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible. She's from some backwater family, poor as dirt. Emily straightened, finding her voice. My mother hid our connection to protect me from greed like yours. But Uncle Reggie found me today, thanks to you. Reginald laid out the terms. Divorce Emily immediately, with no contest, or face total ruin. I've already frozen your accounts, personal and corporate. One more push, and Harrington Industries ceases to exist. Victor blustered, but the reality sank in as his assistant called, reporting the company's value halved in hours. Defeated, he signed the papers Reginald's lawyer produced on the spot, granting Emily full custody of their unborn child and a generous settlement, though she wouldn't need it now. As Victor was escorted out, humiliated and broke, Emily turned to her uncle with gratitude. What now? Reginald smiled warmly. Now, we rebuild your life. You'll move into my estate, it's got everything for you and the baby. And as for the company, if you want, you can take over parts of it. But first, rest. Family comes first. Emily nodded, feeling a weight lift for the first time in years. In the weeks that followed, Emily settled into Reginald's sprawling mansion overlooking the city, a far cry from the cramped apartment Victor had confined her to. Doctors on call ensured her pregnancy progressed smoothly. It was a girl, she learned, and the news brought joy instead of dread. Reginald doted on her, sharing stories of her mother, filling the gaps in her past. He introduced her to his world. Board meetings via hologram, charity galas where she was treated like royalty. Emily discovered a knack for business, her ideas on sustainable investments impressing Reginald's team. Victor, meanwhile, spiraled. Stripped of his CEO title, he begged former allies for help, only to be shunned. Rumors spread like wildfire, how the mighty Harrington fell after mistreating his wife, uncovered by her secret trillionaire uncle. Tabloids feasted on the scandal, painting Emily as the triumphant underdog. One evening, Victor showed up at the estate gates, disheveled and desperate. Emily, please. I was wrong. Take me back. But security turned him away, and Emily, watching from a window, felt only pity, not love. Under Reginald's guidance, Emily launched her own foundation for abused women, channeling Voss resources to provide shelters and legal aid. Her daughter, born healthy and named after her grandmother, became the light of their lives. Reginald, once a solitary trillionaire, found purpose in mentorship, teaching Emily the ropes of empire building. You're not just my niece, he said one day over tea in the garden. You're my legacy. As months turned to years, Emily transformed. No longer the timid wife, she became a force in the business world, her story inspiring millions. Victor faded into obscurity, a cautionary tale of hubris. And in the quiet moments, Emily reflected on that fateful day at the bank, how one push led to her salvation, reuniting her with family and fortune she never knew existed. Life, she realized, had a way of balancing the scales, especially when backed by trillions. Word count 1028.